The studio executives of Hollywood have occasionally hired a particular director to helm a movie which, at the time, seemed like a strange choice. However, in some cases, the risk massively paid off when the movie then debuted to wild critical acclaim and box office profits. Hiring a director who has had success with movies of a similar genre is the safest approach, but a lesser-known name or someone with completely contrasting experience might still have the unique vision and narrative ideas that will make the movie an even bigger hit. It is always a point of pride to be able to bet on someone no one else would have and watch them defy everyone's expectations. Additionally, hiring someone who has made too many similar movies before can be a bad thing. It runs the risk of the final product being a generic carbon copy of dozens of movies that came before it. Finally, many unexpected director choices are associated with beloved movie franchises, where their task was even more difficult due to audience expectations. Peter Jackson, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, 2001. Little-known horror director hired for a monumental literary fantasy epic. Previous attempts to capture the scale of The Lord of the Rings on-screen had proved to be unsuccessful when New Line Cinema took a chance on a little-known horror director to lead what would become the biggest fantasy movie franchise ever seen. Peter Jackson's experience in horror doubtlessly benefited the depiction of the monsters in Lord of the Rings, including the Nazgul, Shelob, and Gollum. However, the studio executives ultimately lucked out when it came to choosing a director who was organized and had the best vision for the epic fantasy. Few directors at the time had the experience of filming a movie with as big of a production as Lord of the Rings, because few, if any, movies that came before it were as big. Jackson had the perfect sense of the fantasy setting he was working with, as well as when to call something good enough and when to keep revising it. As the director, Jackson would have overseen the finalized versions of groundbreaking CGI or encouraged the VFX artists to keep working to make it better. The Hunger Games movie franchise started things off under the command of Gary Ross, who directed a strong flagship movie that captured the visuals and themes of its source material. Many would have expected Ross to stick with the role of director, but the next movie, and every subsequent Hunger Games installment, would be directed by Francis Lawrence. At the time, Lawrence had extensive experience directing music videos, while his biggest Hollywood titles were the average drama Water for Elephants and the divisive blockbuster I Am Legend. If Ross were no longer interested, The Hunger Games would likely have attracted several massively successful directors due to being the pop culture phenomenon of the moment. Lawrence was a somewhat underwhelming choice. However, he proved that he had the best understanding of the Hunger Games books and how to adapt them, and became the regular director the franchise needed to have a consistent tone. Like with the Hunger Games, the new series of Planet of the Apes movies was initiated by a director who did not stick around for the sequel. Rupert Wyatt was also an underdog director who did the impossible. With little mainstream experience, he revitalized a franchise that had been struggling for some time. However, with many of the worst Planet of the Apes movies coming right before Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it is not impossible to believe that studios were willing to take a chance on a little-known director when the more acclaimed ones would likely have turned down the project. On the other hand, Matt Reeves was put in charge of a franchise that had recently made a massive comeback and tasked with maintaining quality in the sequel. At the time, Reeves had directed numerous TV episodes and one vampire action movie. However, he demonstrated with his two Planet of the Apes movies his talent for gritty action blockbusters with serious themes, leading to him working on The Batman and The Batman Part 2.